Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Sharon Celine. I'm very excited to be here today to talk about working memory and forgetfulness. I'm looking forward to hearing about some of your strengths and your challenges in this area. Hi, Heather from Virginia. So Heather has started us off nicely. Can you just say hello and let me know where you're coming from? That would be great. Um, I'm here in Western Massachusetts, and I have to tell you, it is a beautiful day. I think it's in the 70s, which is very strange and I have kind of nice. I am enjoying this. Hi, Carolina from California. Nice to see you. Anybody else here who would like to say hi? Debbie from West Virginia, Onawa from Michigan, Karen from Palm City, Rachel from Saskatchewan. Wow. Mal from Mississippi, Desley from Tasmania, Madison from Seattle. Sorry that it's freezing there. That sounds very unfun. Let's see. We have Lisa from PEI Canada, Casey from Kentucky. It's coming by so fast. Let's see. Still Jack from Pittsburgh, a relative neighbor. Tiffany from Nebraska. Ron, 74 degrees. You got it. Same here. Lee's from San Antonio. Hello, Zoe from Scotland. Jessica and Ed from Michigan. Chris from New Jersey, my home state. Great to have you here. Nessie and Amy and Sarah and Angela. Wow, there are so many of you. I'm so glad you're here. This is just overwhelming. It's great to have you, and I'm looking forward to talking about forgetfulness, which is such an important and troubling issue that many people with ADHD live with, and I'm hopeful that we can shed some light on why this happens and what you can do to do it differently. So welcome everybody, and let's get started. Let me ask a question to get us started. What do you notice about when you forget things? When do you tend to forget things? I'm curious when that is, if that's something that happens all the time, if it's something that happens sometimes. Is it at work? Is it at home? When do you tend to forget things? Ron, I forget about the forgetfulness seminar. That's why we have Siri. Agreed. I love getting those little reminders. Ellen from Red Deer, Canada. Hi, Gigi. When I'm overwhelmed. Megan, all the time. My memory's horrible. Hi, Melda from Sweden. Hi, Karen. Thank you for coming to help your child. All the time, says Danette. Onawa says, when I'm awake, LOL. When I'm busy, all the time, in a rush. Quite often, I remember things I forget when I'm relaxed at night, when feeling overwhelmed and stressed at the same time. So when people do feel overwhelmed and stressed, it is much harder to remember things, and this has to do with how our working memory is related to emotions and emotional control. So let's talk first about what is working memory. So working memory is remembering to remember in some ways. It's the computational space of our brains. It can be an inconsistent filing system for many people with ADHD. Stress impacts the capacity of our working memory. Our working memory has limited space, and often we need external reminders to help us. Working memory is used both in short-term recall and is important for reasoning and guides decision making and behaviors. Why did I come in this room? What do I have for homework? What's on my chore list? If the washer stops, will I remember to move the clothes to the dryer? When we're stressed, we see a decrease in working memory. And the thing about working memory is that it's a sort of this struggle between knowing what to do versus doing what you know. It's hard to pull things up, to apply them in the present. Visual cues can be very helpful, and they can sort of activate the desired behavior or increase success at the point of performance. So first I would like to share with you that I have a little gift for you all about working memory. It's a downloadable, so I'm going to put that right in here for you to get it right now. Let's talk a little bit more about memory. So first of all, some research has shown that there are different the brains of people with ADHD can be smaller. Some organs, some parts of it can be smaller, like the corpus callosum, which is like the superhighway of the brain that connects our left and right hemispheres and has to do with sequencing and the integration of details. In some MRIs of people with ADHD, that's been found to be smaller. We also see sometimes the hippocampus, the seat of memory, can be smaller. Other areas like the amygdala or this part of our brains that connects to emotional control can also be affected. So there are three types of memory: working memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. And while there's some debate in the field about this, it's generally held that short-term memory is super quick. It stores very fast information, and it's not something that you have to perform a task on. It's just something that you store. Whereas working memory is related to that short-term memory, but it lasts slightly longer and is involved in the manipulation of information. So there are different types of working memory. So there's sort of a rote memory. I'm going to tell you my phone number. It's 586-6900. And if I ask you to repeat it back, say to yourself out loud in your house, what's my phone number? And that's more sort of straightforward memory. But then working memory actually takes that a step beyond that. And that is to basically take those numbers, 586-6900, and perform an action on them. So now, in the privacy of your own home, I'd like you to repeat those digits backwards. So you may have to close your eyes to see the numbers, or maybe you hear my voice, or maybe you use your finger to write it in the air. You have strategies that help you remember things in your brain. Now, if someone tells you something and you write it down, it might not matter that your short-term memory isn't as strong as you would like, because you don't have to hold on to that memory beyond documenting it. You've written it down, you've got it. Working memory challenges become problematic if someone tells you something and you need to hold on to the memory and do something with it, but you cannot. When things are flagged in our brains as emotionally important, they transfer down the memory line from working memory to long-term memory, where they're stored. And this is why emotions and working memory are so intricately related. For people who live with ADHD and struggle with emotional control or live with emotional dysregulation, it's likely that your working memory is also a little bit weaker than you might otherwise like. So short-term, immediate memory for simple tasks is processed first. Information that's more complex and demanding goes into working memory, and if it's tagged as emotionally important or has a special relevance, it ends up in long-term memory. Memory is a very complicated process, which I've tried to simplify here. And if you have some questions, throw them up into the chat. People with ADHD often struggle with working memory. You may not be as efficient with your working memory as you are with maybe how you understand verbal information or how you think spatially. It's important to know that working memory challenges, along with those processing speed issues, can be a natural part of having ADHD. They don't cause it, but they come with it. So how do we improve working memory? That's why you're here, and this is what I'd like to focus on. Repetition can improve working memory. It even helps to pair an action or a movement with a word or a phrase. I once had a client who had to learn Spanish, so he created a special movement for each word to help him remember it. If you're learning lines for a play, or you're trying to practice a presentation that you're giving, you can improve your retention and practicing the lines right before you go to bed and first thing in the morning when you wake up. If you are giving instructions to a child or teen with ADHD who struggles with working memory, we want to use what I talk about in my book, What Your ADHD Child Wishes You Knew, and all over my website and YouTube and all kinds of things that I present. It's called the Rule of Three. So we want to make eye contact. If your child is uncomfortable with eye contact, they can look here or look at your ear. The face has a lot of information that can be overwhelming. Then you state the direction. And then you have the child repeat the direction back to you, not once, but twice, because once is the short-term memory. Twice, it transfers down into the working memory. It's tagged as something a little bit more important, and it also helps lead them to doing the task that you're asking them to do. So make some sort of contact. Maybe you can even put a hand on a shoulder, state your direction, and have them repeat the direction to you, not once, but twice. So I'd like to look at some of the comments here. There are so many of them. Wow. Okay. All right. Yes, you can get a replay. My memory issue causes me to lash out due to the frustration of knowing what an item is, but not finding the word it's called, and I end up calling it that thing. And then I have lots of that thing moments. So one of the challenges for people with ADHD is to stop putting pressure on yourself to remember something when you know you struggle with forgetfulness. So how are we going to do that? Your phones are your best friends. Dictation into notes can be helpful. Writing things down, asking your phone to give you an alert, a reminder, a verbal something or another that you can program into it so that you are not depending on your working memory, which is weaker and then more frustrating to you, which then actually compromises it even more. Elizabeth says my ADHD is a struggle. It's a struggle for many people. I've now got listed on my medical file diagnosis cognitive deficits. Do you think you have cognitive deficits, Christine? Or is that part of living with ADHD, some of the challenges? I get lost. I will suddenly almost snap out of being on some other planet and have no idea why I'm in a room I'm in, or what I'm doing there, or how long I've been there, or what I've been doing prior. That sounds really difficult and very frustrating. And I can't tell if it's a distraction or even like a lightweight sort of dissociation where you're just, your brain has gone beyond the Bahamas to maybe Portugal. Corinne, I don't have ADHD, but I had a sixth of my, let's see, Corinne, whoops, that went by very quickly. Hold on. Sorry, hold on a second. Corinne, I've lost you. I'm so sorry. Susan, my cell phone is smarter than I am. Ron, sometimes it seems like forgetfulness isn't just I forgot. but like it's gone. Unless something triggers me to remember it, I equate it to raindrops on a windshield once the wiper goes over it and it's gone. This can be so frustrating. Sometimes for me, when I'm trying to remember things that I really, really want to remember and I can't remember them, like I'm going on a run or I'm on my bicycle and this thing pops in my head and I want to do that, and then this other thing pops in my head. And I basically use my fingers. I'm like, what is the first thing? Maybe I put them in alphabetical order. What's the second thing? What's the third thing? And I tap them like on my handlebar, or I might tap them on my leg so that I have a physical reminder of what those things are. Corinne, my daughter has high functioning, wow, these comments are coming so fast, I can't keep them. Okay, autism and ADHD, and that with my MS and previous brain surgery makes a struggle between the two of us. Yes, and so we want to use things that help you. Visual cues, writing things down, having a list or a big calendar of what the week is, a chalkboard, something so you're not relying on yourself and then shaming yourself because you can't remember it. Deborah says, my son's struggle with working memory has caused him to have to do his high school classes online at home. The school day was too overwhelming. Now we worry about his lack of socialization and his ability to hold down a job in the future. Thank you for sharing that, Deborah. I think that one thing that we want to think about for kids and adults who need to reduce that overwhelm freeze is to figure out some other ways that he can socialize. So one of the things that we notice when there's this overwhelm freeze is that we have to slow things down. Things are happening too fast and we can't process them effectively. And so we want to reduce the size of the task as well, break it down, and gain some perspectives by addressing the expectations that they are having of themselves and perhaps a failure mentality. So these are things that help us with overwhelm, slowing things down, minimize whatever experience, whatever task that's experienced as a threat, or reduce the size of the task by breaking it down, and help gain some perspective. And to remember that as parents, our frustration increases our children's stress, which actually leads me to shamelessly self-promote something that I'm doing on my website in a few weeks, which is how to raise kids with ADHD when you're neurodivergent yourself. This is going to be a webinar that I'm hosting on my website. I put the link up there. Please consider joining me. I'm looking for lots of parents who might be struggling themselves, and for us to talk about what's happening with you and your child and where that overlap or intersection is that's causing conflict. Denise says, notes and reminders are helpful with my memory issues post-COVID-19. I'm sorry that you have that. Stella, I have to make lists. That's me. I'm a list maker. And I actually use this thing on my phone called Microsoft, what is it called? I love this so much. It's called To Do, and it's by Microsoft, and you can have different lists. I have a home list and a work list. Christine, I only know what I do at all in a day by evidence of what I've surfed online, texts, emails, and comments in social media. I won't remember what I was doing or conversations I had. Likely I'll have zero memory that I interacted in this live. That sounds very frustrating, and I'm glad you're writing things down or talking to yourself so that you have a record of things. We have to supplement our challenges with tools that exist. Yes, you can access the links. I don't know if you can access the links. Raylene, my ADHD child struggles if I make a visual list or about reminders or things they need to do, they forget it exists. They have a very short working memory. So they might do better if the list is somehow auditory, like you send them a voice memo of some kind, and Onawa, excuse me for pronouncing your name incorrectly. What's frustrating is when I know I need a schedule but my family won't participate. That's a great thing to talk about in a family meeting. we're arguing too much, there's too much stress, we're going to have to start working with a schedule. So let's brainstorm what will work. Do you want a chalkboard where the to-do things are here and then you can draw a little line when they've moved to done, or you erase them? What would make sense for you? Jessica asks, Casey says, I have 3 different calendars and sometimes I forget to write stuff down. We all do. Jessica asks, how does time blindness tie into our memory and forgetfulness? You know, because people with ADHD and struggle with feeling time, it's hard to sort of understand the passage of time, and to see that we actually aren't doing the thing that we have to do. And we might move something to the back burner in our brain because we are distracted by or pulled towards something that shows up right then. So let's go into some more information about how to improve working memory. Again, I want to share with you this webinar that I'm doing on how to parent kids with ADHD when you are neurodivergent yourself. We'll be talking about all kinds of things that I think will help you in your family life and help you manage your own ADHD. So what helps with working memory? Repetition. Pairing an action movement with a word or phrase. The first time that when your child says, I have a bad memory, or you say to yourself, I have a bad memory, we need to reframe that into a different view of your memory, because bad is not helpful. Bad is a personal criticism, and it leads to, did I say criticism? I think I did. Bad is a personal criticism that leads to a lack of self-confidence. You know, not everybody is good at everything. You know, working memory might be something you struggle with, but you might be really great at translating complicated concepts into visual images. You know, we need to identify the strengths and as well understand that because you struggle with memory doesn't mean there's something wrong with you or your brain. It's just a struggle that you have. We want to explain to our loved ones that the working memory is like the search engine of the brain, whose wires need some tweaking when you have ADHD. Those adjustments come in the form of reminders, alerts, alarms. And I myself want to say to you, everybody forgets things at some time. Forgetfulness is something that happens to all people. And so what I'd like you to do now in the chat is share some of the tools that you use for remembering or recalling things that you have to do. What are some tools that you use? Because we want to build a resource library here in our very own Facebook Live today. And you can be creative. You know, you might create an acronym for something or some sort of, zany associations to jog your memory circuitry. It doesn't have to be, a particular, it doesn't have to be a particular way. It's what helps you recall and remember. So let's see there's so many comments. Wow. Okay. Lists matter. Corinne says, my husband and I share a grocery app so we can add and remove things. That's fantastic. And then when either of us go to the store, we see the mutual list. Monique says, motivation goes down the drain. So tell me a little bit more about that, Monique. What do you mean motivation goes down the drain? Do you get discouraged when you can't remember things and then you're frustrated and so you're not able to kind of get your energy up to initiate or follow through on something? I'm sorry, the video is skipping. Does minimalism actually help with ADHD? I'm going to close one of my tabs to see if that helps with the skipping. Is that a little bit better? Let me know if that's a little bit better for you. Okay. I don't know what minimalism is, what you mean by that, Nicole. Alejandra, I never remember to reply to text messages. It's really bad. I reply a few days later. So one of the things that can help with replying to text messages is I may look at them, but I mark them as unread so that I can actually go back and make sure that I've responded, or if there's something that I need to be able to do, I'll leave it as unread, and then when I have, I'll set aside 15 or 20 minutes to go back and look at my text and respond. Google Docs, yes, is fantastic. I'm not having any issues. Okay. Stella, my mother would remind me of things so often it came across as nagging, and would make me angry, and then the emotional reaction brought on shame, making the forgetfulness worse. Absolutely. So what happens is your mother was trying to help you, of course, and your mother wasn't able to sort of help you because my guess is that she was using systems that made sense to her brain to try to help you remember things that might not have made sense to your brain. So we want to work with our children and our partners to help us understand what makes sense to their brain if they are the partner with ADHD. But if you are the partner with ADHD, then you actually need to start to educate your partner and work together using a Google Doc for a grocery list, for example, so everyone can see it and everybody can work on it, rather than feeling bad that you can't remember what your husband told you at the last minute. I'll say that for me, my husband and I have an agreement that we have a list, and if I text, I'm going to the grocery store, and if there's anything that isn't on the list that you decide you want, you need to text it to me. Otherwise, it's not getting purchased. And it's kind of funny because sometimes my husband will come home and I'm like, did you get the whatchamacallit? Or did you get the leeks or the fennel? And he's like, was it on the list? I'm like, no. And I didn't text you either. So there you go. We don't have it. Why do we struggle with impulsiveness? I'm happy to talk about that, but that's not the subject for today. So if I have time, I'll come back. Madison, I find I write lists and remember, but get decision paralysis and shut down. Okay, so let's talk about that. The list overwhelm. How many of you struggle with the list overwhelm? I'm going to put my hand up because I certainly do. And what I have to do is do a brain dump first of all the things I'm thinking about that I need to do. And then I make a sub list. What is the thing that has to do with urgency and importance? And that's usually about time and value. Right? That moves to the top of the list. Oh, it's due today at 4. I've got to get that in. Here you go. That's more important than something I want to do for myself that doesn't have a deadline till next Wednesday, so I have a little more time. So we want to think about time and the value. And usually things that have a time pressure move to the top of the list. And that sub list may only have 3 things. And so when you're done that sub list, you cross them off. What I like about the To-Do app is you check it and it crosses off and it makes a little ping, super satisfying for my little brain that likes the dopamine. And then I'm not so overwhelmed because then I can go back to the list again, which is still long, and move 3 more things. But when I see 20 things on my list, that's it. I would just want to throw my towel up in the air and watch some TV, right? Who wants to do 20 things? It's so overwhelming. So, Onawa, if your family's not interested in finding a solution, what you want to say is, here's the deal. We need a solution. If you don't want to find the solution with me, then I'm going to create a solution for everyone. It works better if you participate, so you have buy-in. Hi, Elise from Brisbane. Mark, I get constantly distracted by remembering things I need to do while working on something else, but then I can't remember those things when I need to. So I keep a pad of paper next to me while I'm working on the computer at all times. So when random things pop into my head, I write them on the pad of paper. And then when I'm done what I'm working on, I might add them to my to-do list, or I may decide, oh, actually, that's not really something that's that important. I can forget about it. What do you do when you are dealing with this task alone, but you know the schedule? Do the schedule. If you know the schedule will help everyone, and it will certainly help you, do the schedule and say, I'm not interested in being the memory for this entire family. I can't. It doesn't work in my brain. So we're actually going to do this that I've created. I've asked you to participate. You've chosen not to. So now I'm taking my authority as a parent and I'm running this through. Screenshots of things you want to remember. I love screenshots. I do that a lot. And I also, Belinda says use a spiral notebook for your brain dump and then organize the tasks and notes in a certain way. Terrific. Madison found a simple chart, highest priority, must do, should do later, takes the pressure off. I love that. Highest priority, must do, should do later. That's fantastic. Chrissy says, and it went away. Sorry, Chrissy. Oh, forgetfulness gives me massive anxiety when I don't prioritize things properly. I begin to feel frozen and then I get stuck and can't follow back up with the things that don't ever get done and opportunities are lost. So here's the thing I want to say to you, Chrissy. It's the anxiety that's complicating your memory. It's actually, overwhelming your memory and impairing it more than if you could give yourself a little bit of permission to forget things. I forget things. I, Sharon, will forget things. I have to write them down. And if you want me to do something for you, like, for example, I'll be on the phone with my 84-year-old mother, and she'll say, could you please send me this person's address, blah, blah, blah. And I will say, no, I cannot do that. I need you to email me or text me what you want in order for me to remember it, because I will not remember. And then I'll feel anxious that I should remember because my mom is 84 and I want to do things that are nice for her. And then that'll sort of break the whole process down. So we want to slow things down and do that brain dump, because when we see things that are outside of ourselves, then we can actually have a better chance of organizing them into those categories that someone said previously. Madison actually said, how do you prioritize tasks when everything seems like a priority? Okay, so I encourage you to Google the Eisenhower matrix. I, Sharon, have a matrix that I've altered for people with ADHD. It's very similar, but there are different categories. So the first quadrant is urgent and important. These are crises, emergencies, deadlines, things go in there. The second quadrant are things that are in the flow, healthcare, making an appointment for your next haircut when you're at the haircut that you're receiving right now, things like that. Then there are distractions or interruptions. And so it's actually interruptions and then distractions. So the thing is that you really need to prioritize by time. Time is the very first thing. When is what you have on your list due? That is what you have to start with. And then you can work on, what do I want to do on this list that doesn't have an impending due date that's stressing me out? I'm dealing with adults, not children. Me too. Andrew says, me too, Anawa. So I think when you're dealing with adults and they're not interested in helping you, that you really want to be able to say to them, you know what? I'm one member of this group of adults, and I can't be responsible for everyone. I can be responsible for me. If you want to participate in a way that people are taking responsibility for themselves, then I encourage you to get on the bandwagon with me, and let's do it together. Working together, collaborating, my third C, collaboration, always produces better results than not collaborating. Beverly says, I have to write everything down or I get great anxiety. Paula says, I'm alone and don't have help from anyone and don't know how to help myself. I'm sorry, Paula, that sounds really hard. I'm so glad you're here today so that you can learn some tools for improving your working memory and helping yourself. Colleen, I've tried so many of these suggestions, but still spend over an hour a day reorganizing my list. So here's the thing, Colleen. If you spend an hour of your day reorganizing your list, maybe stop being mad at yourself for that. That's what it takes you, an hour a day. And if you need, if you want to break that down into less time, then draw a line through the middle of your list and just organize the top half, right? It's the expectation that you're going to organize the whole list is part of what is impeding you from not being able to do the whole list. Belinda, how can I help my child study? Come to my webinar that I put the link in for, and I will be certain to talk about that. That's not really the focus of today's webinar, but I'm happy to talk about it later. Let's see. Virginia, what I would give to be able to permanently brain dump all of the useless nonsense that is taking up unwelcome space in my brain. So I'm just going to say, you know, we all have nonsense. I have a worry brain, so I have a lot of worries that are often toxic, things I cannot control, usually about my children who are adults, and sometimes about other members of my family. But, you know, I realize that my circle of what I can actually manage is relatively small. It's me, right? And I would like to be able to assist my adult children. They maybe mostly are not that interested. So that is when you really have to talk to part of your brain and say, you know what? This is something that we don't have to think about. Let's turn left and see what else there is to think about. I'm just writing down my downloadable again for you so that you can get some tips, particularly for the woman who says that they're alone and don't have help. So I want you to make sure that you download that to help you. Mark, when doing a complex task in my own time frame, I forget details and remember them again over and over, but I eventually check and recheck and get all the details in there so it doesn't matter so much. Remembering simple tasks and multiple 5-minute tasks is where I struggle. So if you know that you struggle with simple tasks and multiple 5-minute tasks, what you're telling me is that it's one thing at a time. Break it down to one thing at a time. Many people with ADHD, most people with ADHD can do one thing at a time. It's when we have to do 2 or 3, or we say to our children, go to the bathroom and brush your teeth, get your backpack and meet me in the car. And they don't get past the bathroom, right? And they may not even get to the brushing of the teeth because they hear go to the bathroom and they go to the bathroom. And they're like, well, what was I doing? What am I supposed to do here? Oh, look, I'm going to wash my hands with soap. That feels good. Or maybe I'm going to stand on the toilet and pretend I'm a bird, you know, whatever it is. So we want to be specific. Go to the bathroom or go brush your teeth. And that we want to be specific with ourselves as well. Let's see. Sierra says, I have a hard time being thorough at work with my tasks. I'm great at my job, but have these spaces in my work. How do I avoid that? Are these spaces due to not remembering things, or are these spaces due to you've worked for a period of time, your brain needs a little bit of a break, and then you can do another amount of work? It's very common for people with ADHD who are 15 or 50 to work and concentrate for a period of time and then need a short break and then work for another chunk of time and then probably need a bit of a longer break. So I'm not sure what the spaces are that you're talking about. Hi, Amira. I can't switch from a task to another thing. I can't do that. I can't respect timing. It's a flexibility issue. How can I figure out this problem? Well, this is really interesting, and Andrea says the same. So this is interesting in terms of how working memory and cognitive flexibility and shifting might interact in our brains. It's hard to switch from one task to another if you're not sure what you might need to remember from the previous task, or When a task is actually complete, that it may not be perfect, but it's good enough, and then you can move on. So how do we shift comfortably from one thing to another? We give ourselves a warning. We think about what type of transition helps us refocus. That's what shifting is about. I'm moving the focus of my attention. I'm changing the spotlight of my attention to something else. Right? So how are you going to do that? You need to finish the thing that you're working on, take your little break, and then sit down and identify what are the steps needed for the next task. You might even want to identify what the next task is before you take your break. Madison says, I saw somewhere a time block to limit organizing, or guess how much time, self-made games to keep interest. Yep, how fast you can fold clothes. Time blocks to limit your organizing are a great idea. I'm going to spend 30 minutes working on my list. Whatever I don't complete on my list, that's fine. I'll come back to it in the afternoon 30 minutes. I have 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon. Ron says, my brain feels like scrambled eggs, so it's hard to sort things out. I never know where to start. Ron, I think the thing that you want to start with then is working back from that sense of urgency and importance. What is due closest to when you need to turn it in, and then move your way along that. Don't listen to yourself, talk to yourself. Got it. We want to talk back to the parts of ourselves that are critical, that hold us back, that are negative, and send us down the shame spiral. We want to be able to say, you know what? Everybody forgets things sometimes. I'm not a bad person. I was listening to a podcast with Dan Harris, the 10% Happier podcast host, and Sharon Salzberg, the meditation expert. And he said, which I really loved, he said, my goal isn't to be good. My goal is to be good-ish. So if something happens or I make a mistake, I'm still good-ish, and that's fine. And I love that example for everybody in ADHD land here, because there is no perfection. We are all imperfectly perfect. And if we try to hold ourselves to that standard, it's not going to happen. And for some people, good even is too much. Being goodish, pretty much everybody can do, because that gives you enough bandwidth to make some mistakes and regroup. Alicia says, I'm always late to everything because I get shiny moments and then hyper-focused on something completely random. Yes, and this shiny penny phenomenon that happens in ADHD actually can, really kind of affect our working memory, because we move on to the next thing when we haven't fully held, processed, or completed the thing that we're working on. So what I want to encourage you to do is that when the problem is not the shiny penny that you drift away. I mean, that's part of the issue, right? What can I do to stop drifting? And that's something that you'd have to decide for yourself. But noticing that you've drifted and coming back. What is the plan for when you come back from the drift? Because if you're hyper-focused on something completely random, then maybe it's helpful to use a time timer to set timed periods of work, because hyper-focus actually is its own set of strengths and challenges, which I'm happy to talk about some other time. Mark Williams says, Google Alexa. That sounds great. Well, there are so many comments. I'm going to try to read them. Okay. I think Stella, I think my neighbors get quite a comical show of the times I back out of the driveway only to drive back to go back inside to get the thing I forgetted. Yeah, I'm sure many people do that, not just you. And, we want to laugh about some of our challenges rather than berate ourselves. I don't want to read my mail. Some of it is important, getting piled higher and higher in laundry baskets. So Paula, you want to sort of break your mail down into how much you can actually look at per day. And, throw away things that are circulars, catalogs, junk mail. Just throw that away immediately. And then that will leave you with the things that you need to pay attention to. And if you can only open 3 a day, that's better than none. Before and after pictures motivate me to do the stuff so I see the result. I love that, Rachel. That's fantastic. Charlotte, how do I get my child to be interested in doing the list? We prioritize 3 things before school, but he doesn't see any value in it and needs a dopamine hit to work. I'm struggling not to be a nag. Again, Charlotte, I want to encourage you to come to my webinar, How to Raise Kids with ADHD when you or your partner might be neurodivergent. Here's the link. We want to use incentives that matter to your kids, because that's what's going to motivate them to do something. Most kids with ADHD are not so interested in doing a list of things that seem uninteresting or not particularly valuable to them unless there's something at the other side of it that matters. Ron, I'm pretty much the same. I feel like everything is on fire and everything is a priority. Right. And so when you feel that way, you're going to start shutting down and your memory's not going to work. So what I encourage you to do is to basically do a brain dump and then put the due dates for things. And if 5 things are due on the same day, ask if there's anything that you can move to another day, or 2, break those down into what is most important to you, what has the most value, and then start with those. I like Belinda trying a reward system of completing tasks, taking a walk, having a treat. This helps you motivate things. You want to have a list of motivators on your phone and also soothers, things to help you settle when you're feeling upset. Medication can help with working memory. Working memory is what we call a cool skill. It's more unconscious. It's harder to improve than some of the hot skills like initiation and motivation, organization, prioritizing, setting goals, impulse and emotional control. Well, we're going to stop. We've run a little bit over. Thank you so much for joining. I will address this one last comment by Jules. My shame immobilizes me too often. I end up not wanting to engage in the list. What I want you to do is talk back to that part that has shame. Say back to that part, you know what? Everybody struggles with something. This is what I'm struggling with. I can't possibly do this whole list. Let's break it down. Break it down to help you manage with working memory. Remember from me, listen now, that you want to reframe your view of yourself as someone who has a bad memory or someone who has a horrible memory to someone who struggles with recall. You have other strengths. This is something that you're struggling with. And these adjustments to help you with your working memory come in the form of technology as a benefit, writing things down, whatever, using Post-its. I love Post-its, that's great. And figuring out what is a reward for yourself when you accomplish something that's hard for you and you remember it. So thank you so much for joining me today. Please download the handout that I've put up in the chat, and also join me for my webinar in like 2 weeks, how to raise kids with ADHD when you're neurodivergent yourself. Good luck. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks. Bye.